The first thing is the way you drew the underwear, her little thing, it sort of represented like I'm not sure if she's jumping and the little sash is getting in between her legs as she's jumping, but what needs to happen, if this is her bikini line, what needs to happen is we need to show how the bikini line rides into the crotch valley, and how it will still contour around the main contours. I'm going to turn off Skype. The main contours of the body. So what that will do is will help again show that the form of the cloth isn't as heavy and large as the form of the body, and so it's contorting to the body. It's giving into the weight of the body and wrapping around the form of the body, so the body is still a bit visible. Also perspective. Part of the thigh is going to push up against the cloth, and we see the shape of the thigh and how the cloth wraps around the thigh. I'm sorry if my voice is a bit breaking. I had too much hot sauce. So there's that. Another thing is where this little knee is. The knee was riding up a little bit. And what I would need to see is this knee structure in front of the thigh structure because of the perspective. Also, we need to show where the fat is and where the edges of the knee are. So edges on knees, meaning where the bone juts out of the flesh, are very, very harsh. And so we need to see these perfect edges explained here, or rendered here. Also, armor has ridges, so everything seems to be a bit smooth. Armor has like these little ridged thingy that sticks out, and it sticks out of the form of the body because it's an armor that sits on top of an object. So we need to see these tiny little corrections applied. And these are tiny little details. I'll get to the big stuff in a second. But I do want to have a very, very clear before and after today, so I'm going to be spending a little bit of time on this one. And then some time on the environment. You guys can hear me okay? Yeah, they are. Knees are a bit troublesome because it's so difficult. They're surrounded by so much flesh. The best way really to think about what knees are is to think of them as a button on a pillow. They're like the hardest part of a pillow, but everything else is still squishy. Just the button and like the shin bone are like the knee. Also, the belly button needs to compress a little bit more. There needs to be a little bit of light on the breasts. So before, after. Before, after. This thigh here is still a bit iffy for me. I'm still going to have to go over that. But you've got the sunlight. The sunlight should allow some of her face through. So we would get some light on the nose, some light on the light spots, okay, some light on the boobs. You have most of the contrast happening near the bottom, but the sunlight is all the way up there, and yet we're not seeing any contrast happening up top. Contrast happens the closer you get to the light source, less contrast further away from the light source. It also needs to be the same color you've applied everywhere. The light source color should be consistent. So now just zooming out, do you see what that did? It made her face a part of the light source that was happening in the area. Also, another thing that I say is some of you are so afraid of drawing hair, you draw hair as one big shape. That's really not a good idea. I mean, think about the way the hair is breaking into many different shapes. Don't limit yourself to one shape only. There's like and it's just like hair follows gesture lines as well, so find those breaks in the hair. I'm just painting some of this away. What looked unnatural, Kuro? Bye, Mini Pantsu. Thank you for dropping by. Yeah, exactly. Imagine hair like seaweed. Exactly. We want to break up these pieces. Did you follow one movement? So they are following the direction of movement in her head. But it's not as one big puffy afro that has that gravity has no control over. We need to see that her hair is flowy. Okay, we need to see that there is some light on her face as well. Her face is way too dark. It seems like the light darkened her face. I mean, her face is actually that dark. Also, when you look at this kind of stuff, you need to start working on some expression. The eyes are a bit challenged in this case. So what I want to see is like a larger eye, because so much of the expression is in the ferocity of her eye. And seems like she's like yelling like something that needs her mouth to be that circular. Her mouth is circular excessively. You need to show if she is sort of ready to pounce. Either she'll have a really stern, locked jaw, or she's yelling. But if she is yelling, like what is she yelling? What kind of position would her mouth be in? So it's better to think about anatomy at this point. I mean, animation, and how you would animate her mouth if she was saying a specific letter or word or phrase. How would her mouth look at that moment? So these light spots are the light spots that the sun is getting, the sun has access to. And when you draw her eyes, try to give them a little bit more ferocity. Eyebrows, when they crease, they have a little bit of light at the top. Also show the light above the eyeball, because her eyes are opened so wide. That part of her eyeball would be visible. Usually we don't see that. Usually we just see and then the eyeball is nearly half up here, and then sometimes there's light under here. Sometimes there's white under here. But when someone is looking down, we definitely see the light, the whites on the top, because they're looking in that direction. And very, seriously as well. And so what I'm going to do is just render around the face with this light source that we're getting. So there's going to be a part where the light source doesn't reach the face because the shadow of the hair is happening. But sometimes there's going to be breaks in the shadow of the hair. So you might want to add those in as well. Her face is just generally too dark for me, so I'm just going to lighten it up. I'm just going to push the midtones up all the way. And then reshape her mouth. So find, again, if you need a reference for this, find a reference where someone is yelling, or maybe she's bared her teeth, or something like that. And you can see the real anger in her face. You didn't spend enough time on the face, and yet so much is pointing towards the face in that movement. This isn't large enough quality. Again, please send me large quality. Large-ish. Like, what's the size of this? Which size? Yeah, that's way too small. Send me like 2,000 so that I can actually do something useful for you. Okay, and all the basic portraiture stuff still applies to it. All that basic stuff about nostrils and dark spots and light spots, all of that stuff is still applying. If there is light source coming through her nose, what happens is her nose gets a subsurface scattering, which is the nostrils glow pink, because the light is coming through. Like if you put your hand in front of the sun, you'll see your hand turn pinkish. This also happens as a sort of an outline on anything that has illumination in it. Spot illumination from cast light. So a little bit more ferocity happening in the face. Of course, you're going to have to just go back and edit, redesign her face just a little bit. And also, you have to know if she's looking at the guy or not. So, I'm going to try to make her look at him. Okay. Just with a couple of little corrections, we're reading so much more from her face. Also, this is an illusion that you can create. It doesn't happen. There's no such thing as atmospheric fade on a body, unless it's like miles away from you in the horizon line. But what you can do is you act like her body's in the distance by creating the illusion, using it as a magic trick. So adding some of the blue in the background will help make it seem like she's in the air. Also, where's the light source coming from? If so much light is happening on her, she can be a silhouette of sorts. And usually that's the best thing to do. When you look up, the sun is there. And in a lot of cinema, like in a lot of cinematic scenes when someone is jumping on another person, they're usually blocking out the sun to create drama. And so what would happen is they would act like a silhouette. So maybe rethink the position of the light source. Seems to be a bit sort of, at least on the head, let there be a silhouette. That way, maybe cool down the shadow. That way it sort of adds to the mystery and the sudden surprise or the ambush or whatever it is that happened. Sorry. I'm just going to use the reds actually because it's cool. Okay, so just like that. Also, make sure you're lightening everything up accordingly. So the breast area and the shirt, they would all get illuminated because that's where the light is traveling. It's traveling down in between the breasts, down to the stomach, over here, casting some shadows as it travels. Okay. Alright, another thing is the reds in the body are too red. You need to bring down the saturation a little bit. So this is all underlayer. This is what you need to paint over. This isn't done. These corrections are not the end. You need to paint over all of this with a lot of detail in order to bring out the character. So I'm taking down that saturation. You can see how dark it is. I recently posted a video, by the way, on how to deal with your values when you want to change them into color. And one of the biggest things that I teach in that video is the fact that certain values don't allow a certain color through. So if you've got a dark thigh and it's supposed to be a flesh color, that's impossible. This looks like she's wearing black pants. There will not be a darkness that is this dark if the sun isn't directly behind them, or creating some sort of silhouette, or if there's a filter causing that contrast to go up. So at this point, what you have to do is reevaluate your values. And make sure your values are letting you have skin. Make sure your values are allowing you to have skin tones shine through. Is everybody with me? Just making sure it has the right saturation. Flatten. Okay. And now we need some secondary light source, because what happens is she's surrounded by so much light that the edges on her form, so everything in the world is a cube. Everything has a cube invested in it. And so because she is three-dimensional, sides of her body are going to get the light source on them. And so what those sides are is over here, on the side of the arm facing away from the main light. Over here. Do you see what that does? Over here. Along the bra side. Still needs to be more light source up here. Okay. Over here along the side. Along the thigh area, along the shins. The feet are a bit too long. Again, please work closely with your references. Don't deviate too far away, especially with dynamic poses like this that you not only have to draw, but you have to render. And do you see what's happening? The image is starting to pop out. We're starting to see an image that's popping out. I'm going to jump into Liquify one more time and fix up the scale. Right now what's happening is foreshortening. So I'm going to shrink the head a little bit. Shrink the feet just a little. And then shrink the thigh. Because if this foot is behind this foot and this foot was nearly as big as this foot, that was wrong. What we need to see is that one foot is smaller than the other, but the smallest foot is still larger than the head, because the head is the furthest object away. Also, your spear here, let me see if I can... select it. The spear isn't really making any sense. It's like she's gonna jump on him without throwing the spear on him. She's just gonna like give him a quick, like, you know, smack on the head with the spear, instead of really pointing the spear at him in a way that sort of reads as foreshortening. So the spear pointing this way means she's ready to pounce. And that's what we want to see. Sorry about my voice. It's the hot sauce. Okay. So what I'm doing here, I'm just cleaning it up. Bear with me. Oops. Shh. That's my cat. Or maybe you want to point it somewhere else that's more safe, where the arm isn't hiding it, the arm of the victim. So you can have it pointing like this. Just like that. Okay, making it point this way wasn't really, it's like she was going to land on him and then smack him with that. Oh, I see. Go! Okay, sorry. So I'm just going to turn this off because I still need to continue. Again, okay. The hand can also have some of that atmospheric fade. Again, it doesn't really happen in real life, but we're doing it to create the illusion of depth. Just like that, as if she's in a space further away. So just like that, creating some sort of depth. I'm going to jump into liquefy again, and I'm going to bring about some actual muscle groups. So we need to see the lateral muscles right here. And we need to see where her arm separates from her armpit. So right now you had them connected. That doesn't happen from this perspective. We actually see where the back is and where the arm juts out. You also need to see the lateral muscles here and then where the arm juts out. Just give me a sec to zoom out. Okay, we need to see where the shoulders are. We also need to see the foreshortening happening with the head and the neck. The torso is in front of the head and the neck. That means part of the neck is going to be hidden. Just like this. Do you see? How now she's actually seems like she's about to fall on him. Yes, very beautiful dynamic piece. I absolutely agree. Great attempt. Really courageous attempt. The more you do like this, the more your threshold will be pushed, and you'll find yourself unafraid to try even more and more dynamic, and your gallery will be really fun to look at. Okay, we need some secondary light source on her face, so the sides of her face, the 3D, and that would be actually in the blues. Also bring in some intrigue on her face. Her face seems to be a bit bare compared to everything else, so maybe some war paint would help extend the aesthetic a little. But I'll leave that to you. Another thing is how the color of the armor is the same as the color of the skin. Please make sure that you're not sharing that color palette of the flesh unless it's an actual flesh colored armor piece. And gold isn't really orange, it's more green yellow. So it does have orange parts to it, but it's a very, very green yellow. So it'll look more like this, especially in the sunlight. If you've ever seen gold in the sunlight, it looks extremely yellow. This is a bit too much because I have to bring it down. But it looks a bit like this. So you see now this, so the flesh is red based and the armor is now green based. So we have that distinction now. So we're not separating the two. And we're separating the two, we're not creating as if it's sort of the same thing, same exact color of the flesh. Okay, we also need to bring in some peachy warm colors for the parts that the sun does touch on the flesh. So it's very important to remember that where the sun hits, that's where saturation happens. So only saturate where the sun is actually touching. Don't saturate everywhere, especially don't saturate in the shadows. There are some reds in the shadows, but they're very cool reds. Okay? I'm also going to find a unifying yellow light source color. The color of the light source, and I'm going to put it on the skin areas that the light is touching. It was actually flesh? How is it flesh? If it was, it looked like armor. He even had the little shadows of the armor on the sides. Well, I'm just gonna treat it as flesh. It's okay. I'm gonna treat it as armor. Sorry. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is just gonna flatten and highlight the white on the eyes to express the expression even further. And then, again, it's all about color balance. There's some serious color balance issues here. You've managed to match some colors, but they still seem to be a bit challenged. I really recommend getting a really strong reference of this pose as well, because it seems to be too flexible and too like a potato bag, or like a spherical or ragdolly instead of a real skeletal structure underneath covering everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a pink fleshy kind of white for the cloth, because if the cloth, whether or not it's flesh colored, will inherit some of the flesh color underneath. The flesh color in the flesh, the white will get some of it. Not all of it, only in the areas where it's directly close to the light, to the flesh area. And in areas where it's not, that's when you have the opportunity to bring in some light. And cloth acts very similarly to hair. That's where you would need to bring in some of that light. Also, we would need to see areas of the armor that the sun is illuminating. And of course, less contrast, because it's just a bit overwhelming, especially on the ones on the lower parts here. And the way you shaded the foot here, I'm not sure what's happening, but it needs to be a consistent dark side and a light side. So as you can see, what I'm doing is, it's all atmosphere. It's all making sure that I'm preserving the atmosphere properly. It's more environment painting than figure drawing. And that's sort of the distinction you have to remember to keep. Is, yes, you're drawing a character in this area, but the environment came first and then the character came. So make sure the character is respecting the environment around them. Make sure they're respecting the light source. Where is the light source coming from? What's happening to the hair in that light source? So you might want to reshape the hair. If her hair color, what was her original hair color? I guess blonde. A blonde sort of kind of hair is going to have a really high value range. Yellow, again, can only exist in a high value. So you need to up the value of the hair here and decide which section is going to be getting the most light, and then that section there's going to be some major illumination. So her blonde hair here. And then the hair gets warmer, so I'm just going to warm it up with that. Just raising this. And we're going to decide sort of which are the larger chunks that are getting the most of the light on them. So which parts of her hair are getting the light and which parts are getting the subsurface scattering here in the back. And then of course break that up, break those pieces up. Finally, what I'm going to do is throw a wash over everything. I'm going to get that blue and just throw it over everything on a color mode. Or maybe even on, which is awesome. I think it's this one. Is it this one? I believe it is. There's also the color mode version. I'm going to test both. I like this one better. Okay, and what I'm going to do is erase away areas where I definitely need pigmentation, but I'm not going to erase it all away. I want to keep that general wash of blue because that's choosing the color of the atmosphere. The atmosphere has a color. It affects all the colors in the canvas. It makes everything pull out from that color. So that's what we want to do. Because at this point we're painting the atmosphere. It's really important that we remember that. Also her hand, areas of her hand where she is, or her hand is in front of the is in front of the sun, but we're going to get flatten, cancel. I'm just going to give this guy some saturation up here, but then everything else down here is going to stay purple and blue because it's not important. He shouldn't have that much saturation on him. Okay, flatten the image. I'm going to bring in the color of the light source through a glare, because a glare does happen. And see how now it's like it validated it, that the lights that we placed on her body are now responding to an actual source. She seems like she is coming out of midair, and she is attacking the guy. Where before there was a bit of confusion about the light source, where it was coming from. So does everybody see this? So this is the arm shadow, the torso shadow. Alright, so there's a lot of other stuff to cover. The reflection of the lights on the stomach, the reflection of the chest on the chin. All of that stuff is there, and these are all opportunities to bring in some detail. So the detail of her bra thingy, her armor, quote unquote. Just like that. This is an opportunity to bring in some detail. The area of a high contrast here, you have a big opportunity to bring in some detail as well. So some like embroidery or something. Areas where it's dark, you use the embroidery in the light color. In areas where it's light, you use the embroidery in the dark color. You draw the embroidery with the dark color. And then try to create the top sides of the belt, top edges catching the light. The top edges here of her bra thingy, armor attachment. This is all responding to the light source that's coming up out of the top. So again, show us which parts of the boob are facing the light source and which parts aren't. Back to liquefy. Some of the boob is going to stand in the way. Again, the breast is in front of the arm. So we're going to see the breast shape in front of the arm. Stop putting stuff beside each other all the time. They're not all facing the same, they're not all beside each other. Alright, and then I'm just going to create that transparency that happens with the silk. And then of course, like I show you guys all the time, there's a saturation line that happens in between darks and shadows, just like this. It always happens. It just happens. Just like here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is do that highlight that happens on the hand. So wherever there is shadow, this is the rule for subsurface scattering under or in between fingers. Wherever there is a shadow, that's where the light goes. Okay? So if there's a shadow in the inside of the palm, that's where the light is. And then it just travels through the darkest sections. Of course not that bright because we gotta zoom out and we gotta fix it. Always zoom out. You might want to fix this pinky as well. Just like that. It doesn't need much curving just to show that the pinky is there. Whoopsie. What the heck just happened? So all of this is atmosphere. All of this is... Hi, Nori. Oh, I didn't paint this. Thank you, Kurokaze painted this. Okay? So as you can see, everything that I'm teaching you right now at this moment is atmosphere. That's all I'm teaching you. And that's all that we really need to see this massive difference. To see this massive change happen in the painting. We've painted the light source, the direction of the light source, the fog of the light source over everything. We've used the light source to cast some major saturation and desaturation. I really recommend reworking the hair shape because it's interrupting the entire flow. We've added some atmospheric fade, so it seems like she's up in the air. And the spear, I'm afraid I can't paint it back in because it's in the history stats now, but it needs to follow the same, or maybe like something like this, or it is in the distance and it's like pointing at him and it's on its way, or maybe give it a curve. That'll be even more interesting. Just like that, and where the thinnest part is in the back and then the thickest part is up here. And it's like ready to jab him. Okay? So I'll show you before and after, and you can see atmosphere wax. I don't have time to detail it completely, but atmosphere, like I'm going to do with the environment in a second, what it did for the image. Before, the top was a little dark, it was a little dull, everything was too contrasty for no reason. There was no source for the light source. Where's the light source in the sky? Wherever the light source is in the sky, that's where you get the glare. Where's the glare? And then after we added the glare, and it seems like she is falling towards him, like there is an actual downward movement, because we faded away everything that was distant from the camera. So before, after. A lot more environment. And if you feel like you lost contrast, now you can go back in and put in the contrast, because the contrast is happening only where there are intense areas of exposure in a landscape or on an object. So if you hold a ball up to the light, up to a lamp, like a golf ball, you'll see the shadows get darker and the lights get lighter. That's high contrast. If you pull the ball away and have it like 2 rooms away from the lamp, the shadows aren't even visible anymore. It's like, what's making this visible? Because the contrast went way down. So find areas that you want of high contrast and areas that you don't want of high contrast. Also, I forgot to make the subsurface scattering a bit red. Yeah, that's a really good idea, Zelkov, is to make her seem like she's cranking her arm back all the way. That'll give it even more dynamic and even more coolness. Coolness factor will be raised. Thank you for the applause, Antonio. I've never had an applause before. That's new. Actually, it needs to be a little bit more warm. Less pink. Just like that. Okay? And then you see how the shadow is the same darkness as this area? That's not possible. Again, the further away from the shadow you are, the less contrast you have. So it's only dark where it's closest to the object casting that light. Alright? And there is a coolness. There's coolness. We need to find where the cools are. We've added yellows to the light sources. Where are the cools? So you don't just put purple over flesh tones, you get red. Red has purples in it. And it'll cool down the skin tone very, very nicely. And it's the closest thing between the flesh. It's the closest thing between flesh and the shadow and the purple that we need. This thigh is going to have some light on it. The light of this thigh is going to reflect on the side of this thigh. Just like that. Okay? And then this bikini line over here is going to get stacked in behind this thigh. All about stacking and perspective. Which objects are in front of which objects, and the objects that are further away you paint in very carefully and make sure that they are darker. So here we're in a safe place. We're not too dark, we're not too light, the colors are spot on, we have a general wash. Atmosphere is there, we're thinking about the atmosphere, objects that are caught in the atmosphere. All that's left to do now is detail. Shrink your brush, go in, get a good reference on some textures, and you're set. Because all the anxiety is over. I also recommend some major color changes. So maybe she's wearing like a blue type dress or something, because we need to bring in a new color. You've used the same colors over and over again. So bring in I guess I can just use the color shifter. Let me see if there's a cool color we can play around with here. This is a pretty cool color. Sort of look like a bikini. Oh, maybe the yellow. No, we've used too much of that. Oh, the blue seems to match it nicely. Careful when you're doing white bikinis. If you paint them too bulky, they will look like diapers. Maybe like a pink. I guess I'll let you design that. I can't really spend hours on that right now. I kind of like the beigey color. It's fine. But yeah, be careful of white, because it actually looks like you've got the whole thing going. You know, the two little Velcro straps on the diapers. Seems to be happening here. So make it thin and skimpy, because that's the only way you'll get away with a white bikini. If it's too big, it will look like a diaper. Oops. Just making sure I have enough space for the crotch area, and then I'm representing that anatomy of that area properly and symmetrically. Because this guy's got the best view, pretty much. He's got like the bittersweet view. He's about to die, but he also got a crotch shot. So he's in the best and worst time of his life. Okay? Is everything good, Kuro? The only way you can feel which muscle pulls up. Party bikini, turquoise. Yeah, that's a nice color. Bright pink. Yeah, that would have been nice. If it's tribal, fabric will never be white, because no natural fabric is white. Yeah, you can make it. Oh shit! I can show you something. Here, let me show you something really cool. I think you're gonna like it. Okay, so I'm gonna get a leopard print. Leopard print texture, I guess. Whatever Google pulls up. View image. Save. Alright, so let me show you how to throw a texture over something. Let's keep the color because we don't have time for color adjustment. But we still have to make this color match the surrounding area. So what I'm going to do is put it on soft light. I'm going to duplicate both so I can have enough. I'll duplicate another one. So 2 for the bra and 1 for the bikini. I'm going to put it on soft light. Soft light allows some of the color to fall in behind it. What you do is find the area that you want, and then when you apply this texture over it, get the warp tool, or you can even use a liquify tool, and make sure the grain follows the pattern follows the compression of that area that's visible. So let me desaturate a little because that's way too much. So if the breast, so you see how now it looks like there's a button in here. It looks like there's a rise. So that's what we have to do. When you want to add texture to anything, make sure the texture is following the contour of the object it's sitting on. So if it's sitting on a ball, it will take the shape of the ball. I'm just making it wrap around just like that. And to make it you don't have to be neat, it can be messy, because all you have to do after is erase away. Oh, the brush was too big. I was like, where's my eraser? You can do that just like this. And now she's got a more tribal looking armor, I guess. Quote unquote armor. Do you see that? It's matched around her perfectly. Make sure you're getting a royalty free. So I don't have time to do both of that, so I'm just going to flip horizontally and then match it to the other boob. Soft light. And then merge down. And do you see what happened? We didn't just throw the texture on flat-wise. We reshaped the texture, we contorted it, and warped it so that it's matching the surface on which it sits. That's the best way to work with texture, even if you don't erase any of this. Even if you apply no shadow and no light to it. Even if you edit at 0, the only edit you really need is the contour edit, the warping tool. You have to warp this. Nidali, nerf please. Please, I think they did nerf her. She doesn't do as much damage anymore with her Q. Her spear, I don't know what it is. God fucking hate it. Then the other one is soft light. Shrink it and make sure it's just following the contour. So I'm going to do it vertically. And see how there's a compression? It's like she's getting a wedgie. We just have to pull them together just like that to make it seem like that they are wedging. And then just following the warp, following the contours in that area. Okay, and then I'm going to erase away what we don't need. Or you can just paint in the leopard skin. That is up to you. Make sure you have a good reference. Now she looks like an angry Amazonian lady. I'm just going to desaturate them. Even if you desaturate it, it's a nice texture. I'm going to adjustments, brightness, heighten the contrast just a little. Okay, so that's an option that you can go with. So let's look at the before and after without the textures, because you didn't include those. Before. Pay close attention. Look like somewhere in the center of the image. Don't look at one specific spot. Look right here in the center area, and try to blur your eyes. You'll see right away what happens with the atmosphere. Alright, ready? 1, 2, 3. Instant. It's almost instant. You see it right away happen, the sudden atmosphere that's involved. Because that's what you're trying to do to your audience. You're trying to capture them. You want that instant atmospheric pull. You want it to happen. Okay? Just going to darken up the foreground just a little bit more, because the foreground is always darker than the background. I'm going to add some highlight on his hair. Oops, gotta hate the dodge tool sometimes. Gonna bring in some gradual darkening that'll lead us back towards her head. And this is where her face is going to be, so I suggest spending as much time as you possibly can on her face. Find some good references. Okay, I don't have a reference right now for expression, but it has to be ferocious, and you have to sort of express her madness, her beautiful madness. One more time, pay attention. The darkness you had was nearly as dark as the foreground. That's wrong. When objects in the distance have the same contrast as objects in the foreground, you've messed it up. Nothing should have that much darkness unless it's a black hole somewhere in the horizon line. God forbid we ever see a black hole that close. Okay? So we painted the air, we just weren't painting the air. Angry Amazon. Yeah, exactly, Zalkov. It makes it look like you're being blinded by the sun a little bit, like you are in the man's position. Cool. Yes, that's what you want to do. I'm an angry Amazonian while I critique. So I hope you learned something out of this, Kuro. You had a beautiful, like I didn't touch the pose at all. It was a great pose. It was a great story. You had that down. You had that down. You're set. A little bit of execution issues and some physics and execution. Well, he is getting executed, so you got that down too. All right. It is a very amazing piece. Great work. Keep up the courage. Keep up the good work. I want to see more like this.